Minimize. Presentation isn't going to work. Let's hide presenter view because that's part of the problem, I'd say, because you guys have a lame view of everything.
Is one of these slideshows Ottoman military success?
Yes.
All right.
It's the right thing. Hooray! Okay. We got everything. Let's do this thing. We're going to talk about the Ottomans, okay? And as I was trying to say before I forgot everything, make certain you pay attention to names. Names, I'm going to be throwing them at you, and they're going to be like, blah, 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 blah. And I've already pared these down. So, like someone's asking me earlier, it's like, are you going to have more for the book? No. This is it. But this is enough. Okay?
So, are we going to do what we did last week?
Yeah, that's every week, sure.
So,
And actually, I need to check your old section 4. I forgot about it, but I'll do that after the fact. So don't let me forget that, because I want to give you points. All right, so let's start off with this next section. Those of you guys who have notes, you can follow along. The Ottoman Empire, okay? Where does it come from? Where does its name start? All that good stuff. Ottoman comes from the name Osman. This dude right here. It's the forces led by Osman. Osman was a Ghazi, this word up here. Ghazi were holy warriors fighting to spread Islam. Because this was during the Crusades, you see. So whereas the Crusaders are trying to take over the lands of Jerusalem, the Ghazi are trying to expand Islam everywhere else. And part of that has to do with the identification of Islam at the time. Oh man, that's totally jacked. It's actually printing in between the slides. Like, it's all there, but it's like half of the top slide and then half the bottom slide. So it's like half a picture and some words. Sorry about that. That's going to be super annoying. But maybe, just maybe, this will be a good indicator to, print these bad boys. Anyways, so, Osman was a Ghazi. They were spreading Islam. The reason is, in Islam, there were two identifications of the world. This is kind of how they saw the world. Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Islam is the abode of peace, or home of peace. Dar al-Harb is the home of war. And basically, it was every Muslim's job to spread the faith. So they did this by point of the sword. It was also kind of nice being a Ghazi, because, for one thing, you got forgiven of any sins. As long as you were fighting for the Crusades, any sin you committed was instantly forgiven. By the way, the Crusaders did the same thing. So what tended to happen is, for Crusaders, you'd recruit people who were in prisons, or who were going to be executed for various crimes, and they would take a crusade, and it was a way for them to go and fight and basically atone for their sins. It was also a great way for getting cannon fodder. So the Ghazi got free of sins, and also they got to loot anything that they came across. So for instance, if they were spreading Islam, and they found a nice big church that was filled with gold, they would loot it and take everything, basically steal everything. So it was a way of making a ton of money. It was a way of spreading the faith and all that sort of thing. And basically what they did best, fight. The Turks, for the most part, were a Mongoloid people riding on horses, fighting with bows and arrows, and generally scaring the hell out of everybody. They were barbarians. They were like Hell's Angels on camels, or horses, as the case may be. Usually actually ponies. It seems like a weird thing to say they're riding ponies. It seems like My Little Pony, friendship is magic and magic is heresy, sort of thing. But in truth, these are like little tiny short-legged horses that were ran really fast. And they're basically the corgis of the horse world. But they're really fast, so they do the business. So they would basically lay the smack down on everybody. And they started setting up an empire as they went. Osman was really kind of more of like the progenitor, but it was Orhan, his son, his successor, that established the empire because he conquered it happily. Adrianople, which became Ankara. So from there on, the Ottoman Empire starts expanding. But the problem with the Turks, really great fighters, but they're really, really flaky. They only follow people because of how strong they are. So for instance, if you're a really great leader and you're constantly providing them opportunities to go out and fight and earn money and stuff like that, they'll stick with you. But the second you're like, yeah, we're just going to hang out in this capital and be rulers, they're like, yeah, no, I'm going to leave. And so there goes your strength. So kind of keeping track of them was really difficult. So you kind of had to keep them busy. It was like a mental disorder. That's I have to mention this or that's a joke. It's not. But my point is that constantly bouncing around was kind of what you had to do if you wanted to keep the Ghazi in check. So you had to constantly be expanding, which is dangerous for obvious reasons. The guy who really kind of nailed that was a dude named Bayezid. He was the successor to not Orhan, because he was Osman Orhan, Osman II, so on and so forth, that lines, but he's later on, he's a few steps down the line. And he got nicknamed Devshirme. Now this is what I was talking about, nicknames. Nicknames are important in Turkish society, at least when it comes to the sultans. First off, a nickname was given to their leaders to describe their kind of most notable characteristics. That wasn't necessarily always a good thing. We'll get to some guys later who have really negative nicknames. Devshirme means the lightning bolt. And the reason was that he was constantly bouncing north and south as he expanded the empire. So here's what he did. The Sultan, which the term Sultan means military commander. Okay, by leading the armies, you got first choice of the booty. And that's, treasure, He started changing the way that the sultans did that. Instead of taking money or physical stuff, he took slaves. Specifically, he took soldiers, Christian soldiers, who he would then use as an army to fight against the Muslims in the south, so that he could expand his empire south, including the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Then he used the Ghazi in the north to attack more Christians, and so he bounced back and forth, and kept carving out a larger and larger empire as he did so. The dude was crazy fast. But then he came across another warlord who was arguably one of the greatest warlords in Central Asian history, a guy who was named Ahmed Timur. Although you can simply refer to him as Timur, T-I-M-U-R, so how was I erase that? T-I-M-U-R, or Timur-Link. If you read Shakespeare, he's actually referred to in at least one play as Tamerlane. It's a westernization, anglicization of his name, Timur-Link. And that means the lame. Remember nicknames? The reason he was called the lame was because as a boy he fell off a horse and broke his leg, which never really fully healed. So he had a permanent limp. Despite that, didn't stop him from being a phenomenal conqueror. He saw himself as sort of like Genghis Khan Part 2. He's a great conqueror. He didn't seem really bad administering titles. Basically, when he took somewhere over, he didn't really do a very good job of administering it. His main principal way of keeping these countries in line, once he conquered them, keeping them from rebelling, was causing them to be so afraid of him that he was like, don't make me come back. There's the whole don't make me get my belt, only on a larger scale. Dude was nuts, right? And I don't mean that he's quirky, funny nuts. I mean did some terrible things to people. For instance, when he took the city of Baghdad, he had every single one of his soldiers collect 2 heads and bring them back to him. So he had dude had an army of 100,000. That's 200,000 heads. What are you going to do with 200,000 heads? He built a little pyramid of them. 2 of them, actually. One for either side of the city. So imagine the smell of 200,000 rotting heads in the desert sun. It actually caused a plague. Not the best moment. Then, on top of that, when they rebelled, he then came back and engaged in one of his favorite pastimes, Tinker Toys. And by Tinker Toys, I mean he took humans while they were still alive and stacked them on top of each other and then cemented them together so they would die a slow, agonizing death for many days. He nicknamed those wailing pillars because you could hear the screams throughout the night. So nice guy, right? Yeah.
I'm a little confused.
Sure.
Okay, so the Ottoman Empire was created by Osman.
Yep.
And he had a leader, and he had a warrior of Ghazi.
He was a Ghazi, and he also led the Ghazi.
Okay.
Ghazi is a term that means holy warrior. It's a job description, if you will.
What does wolfish mean?
stopped. So here's what happens. Timur did not like the expansion of the Ottomans because they threatened his empire. So he had to come up with a reason to attack the Ottomans, but he couldn't just outright do it because ostensibly he's a Muslim. You're not allowed to attack other Muslims unless you can tell them they're not a real Muslim. They're doing something against like bad, that's not really something a Muslim should be doing. That's why I'm attacking them. Any ideas why he would be attacking Bayezid? What was his excuse? What was Bayezid doing? He was using Christians, right, to attack Muslims, right? That's not a very Muslim-like thing to do, is it? So he says, wartime, and he just puts the smack down on Bayezid. He meets him at the Battle of Ankara, where he defeats Bayezid and takes him prisoner. And that's where we kind of don't know what happened next. You see, this is a painting of the two. You have Bayezid over here at bottom right, kind of looking all defeated and hanging out on the couch. Have a little nap. Have a little book. And here comes Timur. What happened next? There are kind of different stories about that. One story says that Bayezid was kept in a bird cage, like a giant bird cage, and Tamerlane would be hanging out with, whatever, holding court, and would occasionally split crackers at him, keep him as a pet for a while till he died. The other story goes that Bayezid lived. He was basically seen hanging out with Timur later. People were like, dude, what's up with that? I mean, you just hanging out? What happened? And he's like, oh yeah, he plays chess. Because one of the things is chess was an obsession for Timur. He loved to play chess. Absolutely loved it. And how much did he love chess? Well, let me tell you, he named his son after chess pieces. True story. His son's name was Shahrukh, which means King Rook. Turkish, Persian, Farsi. Actually, it was Farsi. So, legend has it that he actually survived, was not executed because he played chess? Awesome. It's like say playing chess. Can you imagine what if he beat him? But executed. Which one? Oh, Timur. Back here on the whiteboard. Timur. So, what happens next? Well, the thing is, once Timur defeated Bayezid, he sort of ended the Ottoman Empire for a short time. The reason is, he could not use the excuse of I'm defeating fellow Muslims and then take all their territory. So what he did was he ended up giving all of the land back to who they conquered. For some of the Christian lands, they can keep that because that's what Ghazi do. And then the lands they had before. Now, part of this is also sneaky because there's a group we're going to talk about here in a bit. Called the Beys, Turkish Beys, B-E-Y. These nobles. The nobles did not really like Bayezid because, remember, a lot of the power of the Turkish army comes from them. He's using Christians to offset their power, so that means they have less influence. So the theory kind of goes also that they betrayed him to Timur so that, they could get some more power back. That does not stop, though, his successors from slowly but surely gaining more and more power. The next guy on our list is a dude named Mehmet. Yeah.
I'm still confused.
Okay, regarding what?
What?
Regarding what?
Okay, how this kind of happened. So the Ottoman Empire was created by gods and warriors, and it was commanded by
Osman. There's three leaders that we talked about already. Okay. Osman, Orhan, and Bayezid. Osman was the original progenitor, the guy who started it. Orhan was the guy who took the first capital of Adrianople. And then Bayezid was the guy who was using the Christians and got defeated by Kanuni.
Okay.
Got me so far?
Yeah.
Like I said, this is the hard part. You keep track of these dudes, right? So Mehmet. His nickname was the Conqueror. Why? Because he conquered somewhere. That's it. It's a conquering Istanbul, which was Constantinople, which was Byzantium. You see, we changed names a lot here. Originally, the city was called Byzantium, but it was made into the capital of the Roman Empire by Constantine, who named it after himself. And then when Mehmet II took over Constantinople, he renamed it Istanbul. And Istanbul becomes the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. So basically what happens is this territory continues to be expanded. That wins him a crap load of prestige, let me tell you. He actually has some interesting stories as well, but I don't want to overwhelm you with stories about these guys. So I'm just going to say, meet you, look him up later if you're interested. Anyways, the next guy on our list is a dude named Selim. His nickname was the Grim, as in the Grim Reaper. How messed up was he? Well, he was a good leader. He kept the empire together and amassed a huge war chest so that the empire could expand later. He really kind of developed pretty heavily. Plus, he actually expanded the empire as well. So, great reign, but he was not a dude you probably want to work for because he did not forgive mistakes. The story goes, he ordered a book from the library. A servant brought him the book, got it wrong, he had his head cut off. Also had the issue of what to do with his sons. See, the thing is, whenever a Turkish empire lost its emperor, whenever the Sultan died, usually what would happen is all the sons would race to the capital. As soon as they heard their father was dead, they'd get everyone they could would run to the capital. Whoever successfully got hold of the capital was immediately made Sultan, and then he would kill all the brothers. Make certain that he didn't have any rivals to the throne. So that would mean that every single time there was a change in power, there was a civil war, which needless to say was very bloody and terrible. So how did Selim get around that? Simple. He picked the most competent of his sons and killed the rest. He had all of his sons murdered by being strangled with a bowstring, except for Suleiman. So yeah, that's exciting. But needless to say, Selim I added Mecca and Medina to the empire in the early 1500s and had arguably the greatest Sultan of them all as his son, which is Suleiman Kanuni, which means the lawgiver. Also known as Suleiman Magnificent. Yeah.
What is his nickname?
This one? The Grim. As in the Grim Reaper. And of course, we have the Conqueror, the Grim, and the Lawgiver. The principal reason for that is that he codified the law. He made all the laws make sense. Yes?
Okay, so Suleiman
Kanuni.
was the first son. Okay.
And then there's a few steps between these two.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to worry too much about like who's related to who, all that kind of stuff. Most importantly, what we have to look at is what did they accomplish in their reign. Mehmed conquered Istanbul, Selim conquered the holy cities, and Suleiman recodified the law and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, basically, Suleiman's reign was the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. It was at its height of power. The Mediterranean Sea was basically an Ottoman lake. They controlled it so strongly that it actually encouraged the Portuguese to try to find a way around them. And the way they did that was go around Africa. You guys know Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus, Henry the Navigator, all these great explorers. That was because the Ottomans controlled the Mediterranean. Now later, the other empires of the world are going to take it from them. But needless to say, there's a good long while where the Ottomans are the power in Europe. How much that's so? Under Suleiman's reign, he was this close to conquering Europe. Like, it was rain that stopped him. It's insane to think about how history is filled with these events. And one thing goes slightly awry, the fate of the nations has changed. And like seriously, there's like a couple instances where this dude's whole thing is defeated by weather. And that's just like mind-boggling. We're actually going to watch a video on Monday about him specifically. That's the Extra History series. And it'll talk about some of this stuff a little bit more in detail. But needless to say, Suleiman, kind of an important dude. His main contributions. And you know, if I'm spending the time speaking about his contributions, he's an important dude, right? So first up, he codified the law. Okay? That means that he basically rewrote it. He rewrote the law so that it was more sensible, that there weren't as many loopholes. He tried to stamp out corruption. For instance, he actually went incognito to the markets, the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, and made certain that nobody was cheating their customers. He oversaw a cultural revolution in the Ottoman Empire. Basically, under his reign, Ottoman culture became not only popular throughout the Middle East, but even in some places in Europe. There are elements that were felt all over the world. There's some of these that we still experience to some extent. He uses rain to improve the economy and infrastructure of his capital, as well as the surrounding cities. It was basically under his reign that life got pretty good in the Ottoman Empire. For the most part, they were experiencing life pretty much as good as you could get it for pretty much anywhere. There's a lot of kind of interesting cultural things that kind of came about from this era, but one that I think is probably the most is religious tolerance. And in a time where you have religious wars being fought all across the globe, and the Ottoman cities, less so the city-states, like we're a country, definitely today, it was possible for religions to get along and actually thrive. There was various sectors of the cities where things were, really kind of quite calm. And that being said, it's going to blow up later, but it's kind of an interesting time. That's all going to fall apart. Let's talk about their military. First off, when the Ottoman Empire first got started, they were relying predominantly on the beys. The beys were the nobles, they were the knights, they were the landed gentry, if you will. There's going to be a lot of efforts politically over the next 2 years to try to get away from that. For instance, they end up establishing a system where nobles don't control land for very long at all. They get moved around, so they're really more administrators than landowners. What that meant is they couldn't build up huge armies like you see in Europe, so they were kind of not as powerful. Also, later on, they relied very heavily on the Janissaries. So just so you know, if you look at Janissary in your textbook, in most places, you're going to see the English usage of this word, which is a westernization of the Anglicization of Jannesaries, which means new troops, the new soldiers. They were foot soldiers for the most part. They were experts in gunpowder weapons, muskets, and cannons. They were slaves. They were actually owned by the Sultan, and they lived is a religious order, almost like monks. Essentially, they were forbidden from marrying, and they were forbidden from having families. Their family was the Janissary court. Now, that being said, in later periods, that didn't stop them from marrying anyways, but they weren't technically allowed to. Furthermore, it was created through a unique system called the Devshirme, which means the child tax. Basically what happened is, instead of paying money taxes, different territories would, or usually in addition to, would also have to give so many children per year to Istanbul to become Janissaries. There they would be trained, given lodging, given kind of a sense of identity, converted to Islam, taught Turkish, and basically become part of a excuse me. Wait a second. Okay, excuse me. Become almost like a brotherhood. They would have opportunities. They were basically tested constantly, and depending on one's inclination and one's abilities, they would be given higher positions in society. It was quite possible to be born a peasant, someone who would have no hopes other than being a farmer, and because of your intelligence and your ability and things like that, becoming a janissary, you could become essentially the Grand Vizier, which was the highest position in society you could be under the Sultan. Probably the most famous of these is a dude named Ibrahim, who was the slave of, as well as best friend and Grand Vizier to Suleiman. How much did Suleiman like this guy? Well, Ibrahim married Suleiman's sister. So they were literally brothers, right? It's kind of an interesting story that you'll hear more about on Monday. Anyways, Devshirme was a child tax who created the Janissary Corps, and they scared the hell out of everybody, especially Christians, for a number of reasons. One, they were ferocious warriors. they didn't run away like other folks did. They fought, and that was scary. They fought with a religious fervor. They were also one of the first big armies to use psychological warfare in the sense of music, martial music, to create panic, because they played very distinct instruments. Like, seriously, if you hear Jannesaries music, it's very disconcerting and weird sound. Like when you think about like music compared to like what we would think of as military music. I'll play some examples later. But as soon as the cymbals and the drums would start up, people could panic. There's stories of armies hearing the music and just turning tail and running. This is what they looked like. And they get very bright and colorful. But basically, their clothing and everything was pretty typical of Ottoman fashion at the time. These coats are called kaftans, and basically these were used in a lot of different places in society. Pretty much everybody wore them, men and women. The style was slightly different depending on whether it was a male or female garment, but they were used all over the place. And even the most base person had one. Interestingly enough, the most expensive ones were given out by the Sultan as awards for service. So, for instance, there was a story about this one ambassador who came to the Ottoman court, and he was given this coat that was like amazing silk, it was super beautiful and all this kind of stuff. And then another ambassador from another country came, and he gave him a coat that was like made of like something that was thrown together last minute. It was like sackcloth from a potato sack. This is really gross and everything else like that. And basically, he was totally stubbing this other guy because that's whatever I'm going to deal with. But again, as far as the weapons are concerned, they have these muskets. I'll show you a better picture here in a second. And these curved swords that, okay, you just a quick note on the word. You often see these referred to as scimitars. That's not actually true. It's called a glaive, or glaive. And it's slightly different in that a scimitar has a longer backswing to the blade. Basically, these are cavalry sabers. In fact, the sabers that we use in the United States for our cavalry troops are patterned off of these. And this was whenever Suleiman took control. Basically, you can see all these folks gathering. And one of the things that earns him immediate respect is he said there's going to be no more executions. Because under Selim, people could be executed pretty much at any time, and it scared the hell out of everybody. By saying, like, no, I'm not doing that anymore, he won instant respect. But then people are like, is this dude weak? And then, like, a story did come up where this guy was basically stealing, and he was embezzling people on tax money and things like that. And, yeah, Suleiman put it in the back. This is kind of having a little freak out. So just a couple more slides and then we're done. These are the muskets I was telling you about. Now, these are not actually correct to the period we were just discussing. The reason you can tell is this ignition system right here. These are what you call flintlocks. The way that they fire is a hard, sharp piece of stone scrapes metal and causes a spark that falls into a pan of gunpowder. The type they would use is called a matchlock. A matchlock is a similar idea, only it has a little thing that looks like a hand holding a burning piece of match that you blow on. When you pull the trigger, it touches the burning match into the pan. So matchlocks are not nearly as reliable as a flintlock because if anything goes slightly wrong with any of that, it doesn't work. Let me tell you, flintlocks can be freaking frustrating if they don't work appropriately. I've seen many dudes struggle with a flintlock for hours. I mean, you can do that with anything.
Like if you're like if you put something that is always like shoot back at you.
Well, I mean, generally what happens is not a bullet, right? Although that can happen. That can happen with any firearm if the barrel becomes blood. But usually what happens is there's a hole bored through the barrel right there at the bottom. And if you're standing like right next to somebody, this shoots flaming bits of gunpowder out the side of the touch hole and can blast someone in the face. I actually saw a guy who blasted himself in the face because he didn't have his chin properly on the cheek rest, and ended up scorching his glasses because it was so hot. But that happens. These are the cannons, and basically they. These guys are what allowed the Ottomans to get through this, which are the walls of Constantinople. And ultimately, there's some other kind of interesting stories about it. Probably my favorite is when they were besieging Constantinople. It's literally on the Bosphorus Strait. They have this big kind of like lake here right along here, right in the middle of the city. And the idea is it's great to be able to put a cannon-bedecked ship right there to lay waste to the city from the inside. The problem, though, is that it's very heavily defended. You basically can't sail through these areas without just getting blasted on all sides from cannons. So what they did is they sailed up to right about here, picked up the ships, like physically huge ships. A bunch of dudes got in the water, picked them up, and hoisted them all the way over here over land. So you got to imagine what it's got to be like. They're sitting there sleeping in Constantinople, kind of get up, stretch, look out the window. There's these freaking ships going over land. What? So video Monday, weekends, good, sleep, rest, all those things, and we'll see you then.
Do you have a whole bunch?
I do not. Sorry. But I would ask, if you need just a couple moments, does everybody have section 4, chapter 1? Homework from the other day. Okay, let's go ahead and get that out so I can check it real quick and give you guys